Well, I'm a board-certified neurologist. I've seen thousands of patients with a mild traumatic brain injury for 40 years now.
In 2017, the settlement companies the NFL hired to administer the NFL concussion settlement contracted Dr. Randolph Evans, a board-certified neurologist in Houston, to examine former NFL players and determine if they have cognitive impairment.
I examined 395 retired players, and what I found was that approximately 30% had cognitive impairment.
By the standards that were created in the settlement, those players should be receiving compensation.
Yes, I felt they met the criteria for cognitive impairment and should have received compensation.
But Dr. Evans says that's not what happened.
A very high percentage of my claims were appealed.
Why were your claims appealed?
The NFL hired a very expensive New York law firm who disagreed with the reasons for my claims. For example, if somebody is driving, they would say that somebody could not have cognitive impairment, which is factually inaccurate. About 1/3 of people with Alzheimer's disease drive. So the lawyers, who are not doctors, are making false claims about medical issues.
Then they terminated his contract. What did they tell you?
They just told me that I was terminated. And I asked them why, and there was no reason given.
We asked Brown Greer, the firm managing the settlement, why they terminated Dr. Evans from the program. In response today, they told us, Brown Greer terminated Dr. Evans' MAF physician contract because his diagnosis did not comply with the settlement's injury definitions. But in an appeal filed by the NFL, a footnote mentions Dr. Evans and says they terminated him based on his, quote, questionable methodologies, disregard for program rules, and refusal to cooperate or even discuss things with the claims administrator. What's your response to that?
It's not true. I follow the program rules, which again were changing during the 1 year that I was in them. I had numerous discussions with the program administrators because the rules were confusing. They grilled me. I was on the phone with them numerous times. I explained why the methodologies were confusing because this is not something that we use in clinical practice.
Dr. Alex Powers is a neurosurgeon at Wake Forest School of Medicine. He has been focused on mild traumatic brain injury in football since 2009. Powers, like Evans, was hired to evaluate former players for the NFL concussion settlement.
My first player I saw, and he clearly had issues, had clear, demonstrable, objective neurological findings. I put everything down. I sent him to a neuropsychologist in town. He went through the battery of tests, which was a very extensive 6-hour neurocognitive test directly with a neuropsychologist, and submitted the paperwork.
Powers said he did his work objectively and the process worked.
Then I get an email back and said, hey, we need more documentation on this. And I said, sure, and I filled that out. Then I got another email, hey, we need more documentation on that. And I was like, this is a little odd. And then his attorney reached out to me and said, yeah, he's denied.
Dr. Powers was taken aback.
I was just trying to be as objective as possible. And you have an independent person saying, yes, they qualify for that based on your rules. I was then shocked to find that they wouldn't accept it.
Powers says it happened again, and again, and again.
When the fourth one came back saying that they don't qualify and they wouldn't talk to me about it, then I was like, well, my job here is done. Like, you obviously don't want my opinion.
Powers says the 4 patients he saw received the same answer: no, you do not qualify for the settlement money.
And so then I just said, okay, I'm not doing it.
Powers refused to continue. He terminated his own contract with the NFL settlement. In April, another doctor testing former players complained to the claims administrator, Brown Greer, that he felt there was an effort to find ways to deny claims. Brown Greer says it made a concerted effort to investigate his criticism, but ultimately views it as his personal belief. Further, Brown Greer states it has never pressured a program physician to find a retired NFL football player either to have or not to have a qualifying diagnosis under the terms of the settlement agreement.
This guy wrote a letter to the claims administrator saying, look, I feel like you're trying to find ways to deny these claims, and I'm bringing this to your attention.
Jason Lukasevic, an attorney who filed the first lawsuits against the NFL in 2011, brought it to the attention of Chris Seeger, who represent the players in the settlement.
I had a conversation with one of his people. They said, well, you know he's very player friendly. I said, no, I don't know that. What is that supposed to mean? He's player friendly. Are you looking for people that aren't player friendly?
A spokesperson for Seeger, in response to our questions, said class counsel will not get into the details of this, quote, unfounded accusation. In 2017, Seeger promoted this settlement and the testing protocols as state-of-the-art.
We had the absolute best neurologists and neuropsychologists put this together. The absolute best. I mean.
Dr. Evans and Dr. Powers are not alone. NewsNation has spoken with 4 other doctors who feel they were terminated because they approved too many players for compensation. They said non-disclosure agreements they signed prevent them from speaking about it. Dr. Robert Stern, a prominent Boston University psychologist and researcher, wrote a 60-page affidavit slamming the settlement for a number of reasons. Because it excludes CTE, that the test battery is not appropriate for evaluating whether these former players have these diseases, that the algorithm used is arbitrary, non-standard, and not supported by any scientific literature, and ultimately that it will deprive persons with documented cognitive deficits of compensation.
The NFL settlement is based upon junk science. If knowledgeable neurologists and neuropsychologists designed evaluations to figure out who has cognitive impairment related to repetitive concussions, this evaluation would not be the way to do it.
The original document is very clear about if this player qualifies for this, and if this is your medical opinion, this is the outcome. It was very clear, and that is not, in fact, what happened.
The problem is that neurologists and neuropsychologists are being asked to administer a legal settlement to determine cognitive impairment.
In the 7 years since the settlement was created, NFL reports 20,558 registered class members, just over 3,200 claim packages received, less than 1,300 players have been paid. In your experience and medical opinion, is this settlement process fair?
No, I don't think it's been fair to the players. I've had many players who I feel have cognitive impairment where the claims have been denied and they still haven't been paid. But again, as a neurologist who's been doing this for 40 years, and I think speaking on behalf of many of my colleagues in neurology and neuropsychology, this settlement is based upon junk science.